We are recording for our members who are not able to attend. These videos are not shared publicly, but just with folks who missed the meetings. I'm Liz Kramer. I am the chair of the CMC. I want to let everyone know that we have closed captioning available today. You can turn it on the bottom bar. It will say live transcript. Please make sure that you clearly enunciate and speak into your microphone so that the robots in the sky can clearly say what it is that you've said. If there are any other accommodations that anyone needs, please feel free to shoot me an email. And we are very glad to have you all here. So welcome to the Community Mobility Committee. This is a place for residents and other interested individuals to advocate for and learn about mobility and transportation issues in the city of St. Louis. We want to be respectful in the conversations that we have and in our questions. We're really grateful to have so many members of the city staff and affiliated agencies here to talk with us and to help advocate for making a safer and more mobile St. Louis. So we want to encourage everyone to be respectful of their efforts and the many varying opinions that we might have. To that end, we want to also try and avoid jargon and acronyms. We have a lot of folks who are new to transportation in this space. So if you use a technical term, please try to define it, add a link in the chat so that we know what's going on. And then we also want to be mindful of time. We're going to encourage a lot of follow-up to happen after our meeting. So we'll try to get to as many questions as we can in the session, but know that if you raise a question or a comment that we can't address, we will follow up both with the staff that are relevant and then also with you to let you know what we hear. So I encourage you to use the chat to share your responses and questions throughout our session today. We have a really exciting agenda, which I am going to stick in the chat so you can take a look at it. And I want to do just a quick round of introductions. We're a relatively small group today, but I'm going to ask the city staff to just quickly introduce themselves. And then if you're a member or a visitor, if you can put your name and maybe where you live in the chat, we'd love to hear that. And I'm going to hand it to Andrew to start out our introductions.
Hello, yes, I'm Andrew Lackey. I'm the Deputy Commissioner for the Office on the Disabled for the City of St. Louis.
Great, John.
Hello, everybody. I'm John Kohler with the City Board of Public Service. I'm the Planning and Programming Manager for BPS, and I'll pass it to Scott.
Good afternoon, everybody. Scott Ogilvie, City of St. Louis Planning and Urban Design Agency, Program Manager for Complete Streets. And I see Grace. Let's pass to her.
Hi, everyone. Grace Kung, City of St. Louis Mayor's Office. I will see if anyone else from the city is on. What am I missing?
I think we've got them all, but I'm going to ask Taylor to introduce himself.
Hi, it's Taylor March, resident in the Carondelet neighborhood and vice chair of the CMC. Okay,
great. Thanks, everyone. And great to see all these other folks who are here today. And I'm going to drop into the chat, and you also got in your email the notes from our February meeting. I want to just take a moment if anyone has any questions, comments on those notes before we share them back out in the world. Nope, looking good. Okay, great. So we're going to move into the next section of our meeting, which is about is an opportunity for folks to share and raise concerns that they see. So rather than having a dialogue during this portion, we are going to invite members of the committee to speak for up to 2 minutes about things that you've noticed, things that you've heard from people out in the community that are related to the issues that we address around mobility. We'll have follow-up to those again after the meeting. So Dawn's taking notes and we'll follow up with them. So I want to open the floor if there's anyone who has a concern, a comment, a question that they want to raise.
I have one concern. I recently scootered from my house near Park and Jefferson to the Foundry on a Lime scooter, took the Grand bike lane to do so, and there is a lot of trash and just random items that is blocking the bike path. such as, I think I saw at once a giant Tupperware top that made it impossible to actually go down the bike lane. I had to look to my left, see if there was a car, go out into traffic a little bit and come quickly back in. So I don't know how often South Grand gets cleaned up in terms of the bike lane, but at the moment it definitely needs a look at.
Where on South Grand? What intersection?
I rode between Park and Forest Park Avenue, and there
The-
was
The
trash
city
scattered.
only sweeps once a month. That's the issue. Like I run the South Grand Community Improvement District, our 6.5 blocks, and we have someone out there 5 days a week. But the city only sweeps once a month throughout the city, so that's a problem. We did just form a committee to raise money to maintain all those medians on South Grand and trying to clean up those areas with our landscaper that we're working with that's coming out twice a month. So that part of Grand between 44 and Arsenal should be a little bit better for cyclists and anyone using the electric scooter in those areas. But yeah, that's the issue with the city with funding. It's always been that way since forever. It's once a month with sweeping. I mean, Grace can answer more questions about that, but they're short staffed right now too. So hopefully maybe we can get the neighborhood associations involved. I know Tara Grove East is doing a cleanup in April, and they're going to tackle that part of Grand as well in their neighborhood boundaries up Grand Boulevard. And I know there's some trash bash events that happen throughout the year, but not enough for people using electric scooters or using the bike lanes. But there are initiatives going on, but probably not as often as it needs to be.
Thanks, Rachel. Very helpful to have you here to answer that. And thank you, Don, for sharing that, and we'll make sure we share that out. Are there other comments or questions?
Liz, I had a quick comment. Jackie Knight, I'm on my phone, so I can't tell if Jackie's here, but Jackie Knight forwarded me a board bill about some resurfacing on, I think those are American Rescue Plan money coming into resurfacing major arterial streets like Grand, streets like Union. I believe Jefferson is on there as well. She pushed that onto us, obviously, because she saw our trail net crash report and said that, a lot of those streets that are getting resurfacing are high crash corridors, which are streets with a lot of pedestrian crashes, car crashes, and bike crashes. And we were just wondering, what the timeline. I wonder if anyone from the city could talk about what the timeline for that is. Obviously, what we would love to see is more than just resurfacing on those streets, because as resurfacing works, you typically lay down the asphalt, concrete, and then it stays like that for a couple of years until another resurfacing project happens. And we're just a little bit worried that if we don't add any other natural bridge-esque type improvements that slow down vehicular traffic, we might see the same fatality rates, crash rates on those streets like Union, Jefferson, Grand. I think there's a couple other ones as well. So just wondering, is that something where people need to get in touch with the city? Is it in touch with the alders? Who are the people that that this committee needs to get in touch with to make sure that other potential safety improvements get added to those resurfacing things? Or is it out of the reach where the money's already been allocated? I don't want to go down a whole long line of how federal funding gets allocated, but are we too far in the works? I guess what's the situation with that federal resurfacing money?
Before we get too far into a discussion of this, because I think this is an important topic, I guess I'm going to ask Scott and John if there's a particular person you think we should follow up with about this question that Sam has.
Yes, so I think it's a really relevant question, first of all. And on those streets, so maybe just to step back a little bit. So there was an ARPA funding bill, one of several that ultimately will allocate all of the American Rescue Plan Act funding. And most recent one included funding for resurfacing several major corridors. So we're not really quite into kind of the details of those projects yet. I will say on some of those corridors, we have completed traffic studies already that aldermen have funded and BPS has conducted. And so I think that there will be opportunities to implement some of those recommendations if we already have completed traffic studies. It may, in some instances, require further partnering with aldermen for ward capital to enhance the funding available in some of those corridors. But we're kind of not quite into that level of detail on those projects yet. But maybe John could say a little bit more.
I'll add a couple comments about the funding amounts in that ARPA bill for those arterials. Those arterials were identified by Streets Department, and the estimates prepared by Streets, to my understanding, for the material only, where the labor by Streets Department is donated to resurface those arterials. So you're really looking at just the cost of the asphalt in those figures that are represented in the ARPA bill. And Scott, right, you are absolutely right. We do have several studies that have been completed on arterials that are identified in that bill. And we need to continue the discussion to figure out how we can strategize to potentially implement some of the recommendations that came out of those traffic studies. Or maybe more globally, look at, for instance, finding funding to stripe pedestrian crosswalks in a more highly visible or durable product is maybe another example of a way to improve the corridor. But until this bill passes and we begin scheduling and Streets figures out the sequence of which ones they're going to do, those discussions will continue.
Great, thank you, John and Scott, and we'll follow up with you and with Sam about this topic further. Are there any other comments?
I've got a related one around some of the studies, and just it's more of a question rather than a comment. It's around some of the initiatives or the studies that are being conducted in the neighborhoods. There's a number of other sort of convening bodies at a more local level or neighborhood level that have are looking to conduct some studies. And I know that there, for instance, there's Kings Highway, I think, is going to be studied to, in some ways, long way of asking a question of how do we connect some of the resident neighborhood ask for studies to what's already been done, and who might we go through to conduct some of those, or at least start some of those conversations.
So I can start out. Typically, those conversations are going to start with the neighborhood groups and their alder persons that represent them. Because all these studies that we've done thus far, both arterial and neighborhood-wide, have been funded by half-cent ward capital, spearheaded by the aldermen. So we have a list of all the studies that we've done. And I know in your area, Skinker to Bolivar neighborhood, we've done them on Lindell, North Kings Highway, Skinker, we're to fragmented degree. We're looking at one right now at a couple intersections. But I mean, you're certainly welcome to reach out to me to help you engage the alderman if that's beneficial, or you could go to the alderman directly.
And Matt, maybe we can do a follow-up also to think about specifically which neighborhoods you're looking at.
And then also the planning department is growing. They're hiring more planners, and there's going to be neighborhood planning in the works for that. So instead of doing things piecemeal of like what road needs to be studied, it's looking at the neighborhood as a whole. So that's in the works with the city, with the planning department. I'm not sure when all that's going to be announced with what neighborhoods are being selected first, but we really need to look at the whole neighborhood, not just certain arterials. when doing all this as well. So that is, and maybe Grace can speak more at that, or Scott, but that's awesome that we're getting more planners and working on these neighborhood plans, and this will help with that instead of piecemealing things together.
Yeah, so I will say that in any neighborhood planning process, and of course we've adopted plans already for several neighborhoods. The recommendations for roadway improvements or changes tend to be at the conceptual level in those neighborhood plans, kind of the first step of figuring out what residents might desire. You still have to get into the more detailed kind of traffic studies and assessments prior to getting to an implementation phase. So we sort of work our way up from conceptual and neighborhood plans to detailed traffic studies, at which point we're usually trying to figure out how to fund a project. Usually BPS runs the traffic study, although third parties also do it sometimes. And then we engage in whatever conversations are required to come up with funding to actually implement. So we do hope we have more planners. Hard to hire, but would love my office to be more crowded.
So I think this is a topic that we would like to bring up later this year about how transportation planning intersects with neighborhood planning. So we will come back to this topic in hopefully much greater depth.
Sure.
Kaylina.
Hello. New subject, and this may not be the right spot. More of a complaint, needs some solidarity. I was biking down Manchester and somebody had parked in the bike lane. This is the west of me approaching Manchester. And I motioned to go around them. There was plenty of space and I got the worst street harassment I've gotten in years. And so there's some don't park in the bike lane. There's some dude was driving 65 down Manchester and the speed was way too high. But he crammed me back off the road and then proceeded to stop next to me and scream at me. And there's bystanders too, is what's really impressive about this whole scenario. So I just needed some comfort. I can't share it in a lot of groups as I'm trying to convince people to choose alternative forms of transportation when it really fucking sucks sometimes. So that's just a complaint for a minute. Thanks.
Thank you for sharing that. And also that sounds terrible.
Yep.
Terrible
It's
experience.
a pretty bad one. Yeah, thanks.
Okay. So are there any other final comments before we move on to our next agenda item?
Just on Kaylina's comment, isn't there like an anti-harassment? Is there something she can do about that, or is it too late since it already happened? I'm not 100% sure with what like the language in that ordinance is, but
there is a so depending on sort of the level of harassment, obviously it could take any number of sort of law enforcement paths, but there is a local ordinance that makes that type of behavior something that can be cited and fined. My guess is that has rarely happened because you would probably need pretty substantial evidence, I think, to ticket that type of behavior, but it is an ordinance that's on the books.
Good to know. Thanks.
Thanks for sharing that. Taylor, do you have something?
I was just going to say I dropped that ordinance text in the chat from when that passed in, I think it was 2012. So
great. Okay, we're going to move on to our next topic. We have Daniel Arias here from Metro to talk about some of the work that's going on kind of broadly, and we're very excited because I know this is a topic that folks are really interested in. So Daniel, we're really grateful to have you here. I think you all know Brian Rogers, who's a member of our committee, is also working on our bus stop things, but Brian's not able to join us. So we're excited to have Daniel share.
Thanks a lot for having me, and thanks for the very kind intro, Liz. I apologize if I cut out at any point. My normally really reliable internet is acting kind of unstable today, so sorry about that. But I'm here to talk to you about a program that Brian and I have been working on. And the goal of this program is really to allocate our resources more effectively in terms of investing in our bus stops. So we're calling it the Bus Stop Amenity Program. And bus stop amenities really include anything that exists at the stop for the passenger. So benches and shelters, trash cans, signs, and especially the part of the streetscape that helps you access the bus stop. So one big focus that we've had so far is on achieving compliance with ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act. A lot of that looks like good sidewalks, good curb cuts. So mentioned some of these program goals already. We want to build a program that helps us invest with an impact for riders. And I think Brian and I agree that equity is a really critical component of that. So we want to look at the system in terms of who rides, where they live, and invest in those places. We also really want to be thought leaders instead of reactive in terms of how we invest in our bus stops. We think that we have everything we need, the information and the empowerment from our leadership to be thought leaders when we work with the city and potentially private entities to invest in those stops. And finally, we want to kind of focus on sustainability. I think a lot of people think about sustainability strictly environmentally, but here we really mean something more like financial sustainability or the sustainability of the program, self-sustaining as it moves forward. So thinking about recording our data better, thinking about maintenance when we make investments in our bus stops to make sure that the program can continue and be healthy. So all of that sounds great, I think, but the picture today is a little bit gloomier. Currently in Missouri, almost half of our bus stops are not ADA compliant. And most of that comes down to sidewalk conditions, curb cuts leading up to the bus stop, and a couple of other things. So we have a lot of work to do to make that happen. And as you might imagine, the investment required to get all of those stops up to compliance is far greater than we have at our disposal. I also wanted to kind of highlight some past practices. Metro Planning Department is very well-meaning and stretched very thin. And so a lot of times when folks come to us suggesting investments in our bus stops, we sort of react with great, sure, you're going to pay for it, awesome. And that kind of pattern going on for a long time has led to investments in places that are not necessarily great for our riders. They might be great for private investors around those stops, but they don't put the dignity of the rider first. So we're hoping to really change that with this program. So I'll try not to bore you too much with the technical stuff, but wanted to mention some of the things that we're looking at to help us understand the value of making an improvement to a bus stop, for example. So if you remember back in 2019, we had a bus network overhaul called Metro Reimagined. And in 2018, preparing for Metro Reimagined, we conducted an assessment of every bus stop in Missouri. So we went and looked at every stop, about 4,000 of them, took stock of their conditions, what amenities were there, the infrastructure conditions, those sorts of things, and estimated how much it might cost to make needed improvements. So we took that information and we combined it with some analysis on demographics as well as ridership around each bus stop. So we kind of looked at, a little quarter-mile walk shed around each stop, and we said, how many people live there? How many people who are senior, people who are low income, people who are non-white, and how many households that say they have a disabled member live there. And then we also looked at where schools, hospitals, those sorts of things. So we took all of this information and kind of scored each stop on each aspect. So the highest scores for, say, number of people who are seniors near the stop would get a score of high for senior population. We did that for ridership too. So all this information, we pulled it together and we sort of get this qualitative sense for, all right, what is the value to the rider to making improvement here? So with that program sort of getting started, we asked ourselves, well, what can we do this year? So we decided to try to identify the very highest priority bus stops and make them ADA compliant. So here was kind of our approach, and we've completed this approach, and we're in review for each of these stops, and we're hoping to, make changes to these stops this year. So it's really exciting, but just a little bit about how we chose them. So we made 3 lists. The first one was our service planning team, the same team that went out and conducted the assessment, identified their wish list stops for turning this stop into an ADA compliant stop. The second list is using some of the data we collected, identifying stops that are either a transfer point or already have a bus shelter, but they are not ADA compliant currently. The thought there is, well, these are important, we've stated important stops to our system, so let's bring them up to compliance. And then the last list is using some of that demographic and ridership data and trying to identify places where people really use these stops, but they're not compliant. So here's kind of the overlap of these 3 lists. There were about 320 in total, which is unfortunately, even that is kind of out of reach for us in 2022 to make all of these improvements. So we decided to select the stops where overlap takes place. So you're on multiple lists. And then to round out the list, all of the rest of the stops that have high ridership or high demographic and high demographic indicators. So that's 120 total stops. And we feel really good about the list that we've created to get started and hopefully make an impact with our dollars right away. So like I mentioned, we like the approach. We think it gives us the opportunity to make a difference right now, advocate for hopefully more dollars going into the future to make improvements like this, and take those steps towards full ADA compliance. It's going to be a long road. We're not sure if the cost estimates that we got in 2018 still apply, given things like inflation and the changing landscape of contract work that have taken place since. And kind of to round it out, we get a lot of external suggestions like, oh, you should do this or that cool thing with your bus shelter. You should put solar panels on it. You should give it speakers so people can play their favorite music while they're waiting for the bus, whatever. All of that stuff could be great, but if the stop isn't accessible, what's the point? So we're hoping to lead from here and continue our partnership with St. Louis City, with the county, different municipalities, and private folks as well to start making a difference on this. So thanks. I'm open to any questions.
Thanks, Daniel. Are there any questions right off the bat?
I don't have a question, but just some general comments to update everyone on the city's efforts in collaboration with Bi-State. We work closely with your group at Bi-State to come up with an unfunded Tier 3 MoDOT project to upgrade and update all citywide bus stops in this latest round of development of tier 3 applications to MoDOT. And our estimate at that time was about $7.5 million to do that. And it made the MoDOT list. And I was just looking at how they broke it out with East-West Gateway. And they're showing it by some corridors, not necessarily citywide, that I can interpret. Is anyone from East-West Gateway? Melissa, are you on?
Yeah, I'm on here.
Do you know if the final list of the MoDOT Tier 3 includes citywide bus stop upgrades?
No, I'm not too sure about the MoDOT list.
Okay.
John, we're going to have Jen join us at the next meeting, so we can specifically ask her to talk about that when she comes.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess the main comment is that we have been working very closely with Bi-State, and it's a good collaboration to continue the discussion to get funding to upgrade all the bus stops in the city.
Awesome. Thanks, John. Yeah, we that's really more Brian's bread and butter. But we did get to speak with Andrew and his team about some ADA planning and present this to them, and I'm really excited to continue that partnership.
So we have a couple of questions and comments. One comment is from Aubrey: with the current shortage of drivers, I'm assuming real-time traffic information would be really valuable. Then we have a question from Taylor. A lot of these bus stops are along major streets or roads. Is there potential to partner with some of the ARPA funds that we talked about earlier in today's meeting?
That's a good question, Taylor. That's really outside of my area of expertise, to be totally honest. I think there is absolutely potential to connect this information that we're collecting to greater funding opportunities. For ARPA specifically, I'm not so sure. And in the short term, we're aiming to really just focus in on what we can do with our own capital budget, as well as starting to build partnerships with, this framework as the kind of talking point around those partnerships. To be honest with you, I'm not an expert on ARPA funds, so I'm not sure I could answer that question really well.
Daniel, do you mind if I chime in here?
I'm sorry, I cut out.
This is Lisa. Daniel, do you mind if I chime in a little bit?
Oh, please. Thanks, Lisa. Yeah, saving my butt.
To Aubrey's question, and I'm sorry, you guys, I'm off camera because I have a nasty cold and I'm just getting my voice back. But one of the biggest problems that we've had during COVID, because of the bus driver shortage in particular, is just not being able to stick to our schedules, right? So we have scheduled service out there, but the buses aren't meeting them because we have people call in, we have too few drivers. And on March 21st, earlier this week, we did just cut service again. So we had our quarterly service change. And so it is a reduction of frequency. There was not a reduction of lines. This time there was no reduction in geography. And we're really, really, really hoping that this isn't a baseline, that this will be like sort of the bottom floor from which we can move back from. And so we should see not the kind of quality and level of service, frequency of service that we'd really like, but that at least that the published schedules that are out there are being met. So people can rely on, oh, my bus is supposed to come at the hour, it will be there at the hour. I don't have to wait an extra 45 minutes because my bus didn't come. So that's number one. And, again, hopefully, so we'll see that, but definitely tell folks that maybe you may be having issues with buses, that's something that we're working on. To the ARPA funding question, it's a great idea. The problem with funding bus stops, as Daniel was saying, it's not for a lack of us caring about them, but they're not very sexy infrastructure investments. Even Missouri Foundation for Health, I was talking to somebody over there recently, and they're really looking to do some systems work change. You bring up bus stops and they're like, oh, that may not be so important. So we really could use some strong advocacy for the bus infrastructure for folks. So that's something that we could really use some help with. I doubt that any ARPA funds will be used on bus stops, though there's always a chance. And again, if there's advocacy for that, that's cool. It will probably be used on much bigger priorities when we have big pots of money like that. People want to see, big ribbon cuttings, not a bus stop. So bus stops are some of the most important things for the everyday rider, but some of the least important things for the people who are making funding decisions. So this is definitely something, again, that we could use advocacy on. And I really love the work that Daniel and Brian have been doing to try to prioritize, making 300 bus stops sounds like a lot to prioritize, and it really is. But seeing as we have about 3,000 bus stops in the region, it's just a drop in the bucket of really trying to make things better for the people who use the bus regularly.
Thank you, Lisa. I think that's really helpful for us to hear too. We can make sure we share that. We have some more questions in the chat. Aaron would like to know if the information about the bus stop design requirements will be made public.
We are not totally sure yet whether this program is going to be made public. We hope so, but we're still working on it. And as we finish it up, we'll check in with our department head. And we hope to be able to make it public, but we'll have to let you know.
Great, thanks, Daniel. Kevin would like to know, can crash or safety considerations be incorporated into prioritizing the list of improvements? Or is that already part of your consideration?
Yeah, that's a really great point, Kevin, and it's currently not incorporated in here. And I know Sam has been working hard to collect that crash data, and a lot of kind of critical results surrounding bus stops have come out of that effort. So I think that it's to be able to expand and consider those things. I would love to be able to do that. So I think a good starting point there would be Sam connecting with you on the crash information that you have. Really the ease of the data format and incorporating it into the framework would be like one of the big sticking points. So getting some support on that from Sam, who's done some of the legwork, would be awesome. And I definitely think we should consider that, because the lack of, quality sidewalks, for example, definitely exposes people walking to the bus to safety concerns.
Daniel, if you want that map of crashes within a 200-foot proximity of bus stops, I got it.
I do.
Okay, I'll pass that along.
Thanks.
Are there other questions, even broader questions about Metro service while we have Lisa and Daniel here?
I guess one broader question in terms of advocacy: how can people who care about bus service in the region help individually with the bus driver shortage?
Tell people.
Lisa, I'll put you on the spot if you have thoughts on that.
Yeah, tell people to apply. I mean, it's a very complicated systemic issue having to do with funding in part. Right now we have, I hesitate to say, but plenty of money for bus drivers because we don't have enough bus drivers. But we also, it's a union position. And so we negotiate a contract for wages over a 3-year period. There is another contract negotiation like in the works right now. So we're really hoping that there's some stuff that will happen there that will be really useful for getting some folks online. But it's the same kind of, labor issue that lots of industries are seeing. Being a bus driver used to be a great pathway to a stable middle class, with retirement position. When you have people and private entities able to pay $50 an hour to incentivize you to do something in the moment, it's a lot less competitive of a gig. But it's also, it's a hard gig. It's basically driving a semi while you are, the front desk of an emergency room taking care of customers at the same time. So it's a lot. So yeah, I don't have a really great answer to that question, Taylor. We could definitely use some more systemic advocacy, but what individuals can do is a lot harder question to answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. So I think this has been really helpful and interesting. I have one question that we have, and Daniel, you talked a little bit about the importance of sustainability in these bus stop upgrades that you're going to do. One question that comes up a lot in the CMC is about bus stop maintenance and how bus stops are long-term maintained. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about how that fits into the new system.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one piece of low-hanging fruit there was getting people who do the maintenance and people who do the planning in the same room, and getting a better understanding of how our planning decisions, or putting a new amenity out there, for example, affects maintenance. So we're starting to have that conversation, especially with regards to shelters and benches. When you start to expand to sidewalks and especially trash cans, the maintenance picture gets a lot more complicated for reasons that are kind of legacy. So for instance, that they maintain it empty on their own, but the majority of trash cans on the system are maintained by either a municipality or somebody who adopted the stop. So getting a consistent program out there to say have the trash emptied regularly and those sorts of things starts to get much murkier. But we are hoping to get good record of inventory for all of those things, as well as an understanding of how our decisions affect maintenance dollars and efforts to be able to have that feedback loop a lot tighter and to maybe even reallocate amenities at some point in the future to be able to maximize their impact and make the maintenance worth it. So early stages on that, but we're definitely looking to incorporate every aspect of that.
Great, thank you. Okay.
I just in the chat there, sorry, for that the question about individual advocacy. That is something that individuals or small groups could do. Daniel mentioned the Adopt a Stop program. If you wanted to adopt a stop and say, hey, we're going to make sure that the trash is picked up around this stop, that's an awesome thing. Because again, the municipalities do it. With Metro having over 3,000 bus stops, it's not something that we do regularly, but individuals could do that.
Great, thank you, Lisa. Sam?
Yeah, I was just gonna say one more thing, just to give Daniel some props. He's done a really good job of formalizing a lot of the data that Metro has. Sorry, I'm taking myself off. Put my video on. He's done a really good job of and he's helped me a ton, specifically with the crash report and things like that, getting bus stop data and stuff like that. So I don't want to put more work on his plate. I don't want to out him, but you know, if you're ever looking for data, it is actually open to the public. The CMC put an article out actually about, you know, citizen advocacy around just transportation projects in general. So there is a link on our blog that actually has a link to all the data, stuff like bus stop data. And I believe a lot of the data that when Daniel was talking about going out and looking at every single bus stop, I believe that data is public, Daniel, correct? Where you can go in and see what the ADA requirements and stuff are like. Unfortunately, you do have to have a ArcGIS login, which I believe is free just to view to the public. But yeah, there it is. It might be, yeah, data resources. That's it. So yeah, that is a tool that I use all the time in my work. And if you're ever looking for citizen advocacy stuff like that, it's there. It's open to the public. There's a ton of great information that I personally use all the time, and just want to thank Daniel for formalizing a lot of that data for us.
Thanks, Sam. I really appreciate that. That means a lot. And yeah, please do reach out to me if you're interested in bus data or Metrolink data. I will definitely do my best to provide it for you. And I will probably not ask a lot of questions about whether I'm supposed to be sharing it before I share it. So
You can also reach out to me too. He gave me some Metro bus data for 2019 pre-pandemic stuff. So if you ever want data, we got it, and we're open to share it. So
awesome. Well, Daniel, thank you so much for coming and presenting on this project. We're really excited to see this come to fruition. Lisa, thank you for coming, even though you're sick, to help answer some questions. We're really grateful for the work that Metro is doing to keep our transit system moving in this really difficult time. I want to move us along to the last bit of our agenda. So a couple of things that I will say. First of all, I want to let everyone know that there is on the April 5th ballot, a $50 million bond issue. Two of the things that bond issue covers are resurfacing and repaving and repairing streets, as well as designing and constructing pedestrian and bicycle transportation facilities. I've dropped the sample ballot in the chat, and I'm also going to drop an article from TrailNet in so that you can take a look at what's coming up on that ballot. And we just want folks to know that that is very soon. That is in like 2 weeks. So please let people know that they should go vote, even though there's only 2 things on the ballot this time around. Anyone have anything else they want to add on this?
Liz, just maybe 2 notes. It's not all for roadway, resurfacing sidewalks, but that's a component that it can be spent for. And it's a bond issue, but it does not increase anyone's taxes. It just keeps the tax at the same rate and extends bonds years into the future.
Thanks, Scott.
I have a quick question. If this is included, I haven't read it yet, so I apologize, Scott. I'm very excited about the Compton Bridge project and the dedicated bike lane going down Tucker. On Grand Boulevard, we struggle with the 9 medians. I formed a committee with the Alderwoman and Tara Grove CDC and DeSales, and we're raising $25,000 a year to maintain these medians that have fallen to disarray because the city just doesn't have the funds to maintain them the way that the community wants. So what we're going to do, we're maintaining the new medians and landscaping that's going to be added to the Compton Bridge and the dedicated bike lane area on Tucker. Does this bond include something with maintenance with future medians?
So the bond is specifically for capital items that are kind of long-term assets. So it's not like operational funding for things like maintenance. The new Compton Bridge is not going to have any landscape features on it. It's going to be roadway and cycle track and sidewalk.
Okay,
So
I saw renderings that looked like there was all this landscaped.
Yeah, sometimes we see early kind of conceptual renderings that are a little more flowery than the actual projects end up being. But yeah, Compton won't have any landscape features to maintain.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad to hear that.
Great, thank you for that question and the clarifications. I want to give Scott and is Matt still on here? Scott and Matt a chance to talk about the asphalt art project.
Sure. I'll do a quick screen share. Oh, if you can enable sharing for me, I'll share. So I think we've touched on this before, but the city applied for, and Artworks, which is an arts education organization on Del Mar, has received funding to do an asphalt art or street painting project. The artwork has been under development by Artworks apprentices. They've been in class this spring. Matt Bernstein's, one of his Washington University classes, partnered with them to do some additional brainstorming and data collection and just conversation about the intersections we're looking at. And we've had a variety of community engagement efforts so far. So we are getting to the implementation phase now. I'll just share real quick. So this is the first 4 intersections on Hamilton Avenue north of Del Mar. So Enright, oops, Come on, computer. There we go. Enright, Clemens, Cates, and Cabiny. And so we'll be installing artwork in these painted bump out areas. The goals of the project are kind of threefold. One, to create art and to create public art that the community can enjoy on the street. Two, to provide traffic calming and do things like increase stop sign compliance and reduce vehicle speeds on the street. And three, just to engage residents and have volunteers come out and help with the installation. So students have been working on some concepts. They painted these concepts in kind of a large format. We took some pictures of these and have been displaying them on boards at Artworks and out on Hamilton Avenue at the community event last weekend. And we hope that our first painting day will be April 2nd, Saturday, April 2nd, from about 10 a.m. to 3 p.m., which is when the class meets. We hope to paint April 2nd, April 9th, and April 23rd. And Liz, I think we'll send a synopsis of that to you. You can distribute it to the CMC if anybody wants to come out and help. Want to push a paint roller around on the street. We would love to have volunteers. And Matt, what else should we say about it?
I think you covered it. I was just hoping to get the word out so we could get some volunteers. I think this is an exciting project and one that could probably be replicated in lots of other places around the city.
Yeah, I guess the last thing I would add is just that I can't stop sharing that. Oh, there. The artwork is developed by teenagers, so that's been cool. So, you know, what we see on the street will really be led by youth. The adults are there to kind of provide a framework for the project, but the artwork is very youth driven. So I think it'll be exciting to see the finished product in a month or so.
Great.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. That is an exciting project. I'm curious what type of paint material you're going to use, and will it be longer lasting than other types of street art that we've seen around Shaw, which was more chalk based?
Yeah, so what we're going to do is use like an asphalt striping paint that would something commercially available for like parking lot striping. We're going to put down a base coat, like a primer coat in those bump out areas. And then we're going to use an exterior latex on top of that. So hopefully the asphalt paint adheres to the asphalt pretty well. And the latex adheres to that. And then we've generally kept those areas out of the travel way for vehicles. So you won't have a lot of car tires on it anyway. So we hope that helps it hold up. But the expectation is not that it's permanent. So if it's a year or two, that's kind of what Bloomberg, the grant funder, is looking for. We know it's not going to last forever.
What
Thanks,
you might,
John. I'm sorry. I want to make sure that we can get to our subcommittee update. So if we've got other things on this, we'll follow up afterwards.
I'll talk to Scott also.
So we just have a couple minutes left, and I want to be sure that we can get to some quick subcommittee updates. I'd like to start with the engagement subcommittee. Dawn?
Hello, everyone. The engagement committee is, as you may have seen, focused on creating a welcome letter and guide that we will share with all new voting and non-voting members. There is an option to opt in for the membership directory. As I said, it's an opt-in, so please do not feel like you have to share your email or phone number, but if you would like to be added, please email me just your phone number and your email that you'd like in it. It's greatly appreciated. And then we do have a new application that we would like the committee to vote on. The applicant is a white female who lives in Dutchtown. She is a daily/weekly public transit user on both the bus and the Metrolink. She does identify as deaf. She will only be representing herself as a citizen and has agreed to all of the terms and conditions of being a voting member. Liz will follow up after the meeting with all voting members with more details and instructions on how to vote on this application. Thank you.
Great, thanks, John. Kevin?
No update, and I'll reserve some time for a comment afterwards.
Sam?
Hey, everyone. Yeah, the information's there. One thing I just wanted to mention about the open space subcommittee, open streets, parklets, whatever you want to call it, is that spring is fastly approaching. So now is the time to start talking about a lot of these things like parking day, like open streets events, you know, getting people out walking, biking, rolling in places where they can do it. So excited. Yeah, info's on the bottom. Always taking people. So.
Thanks, Sam. Kevin?
This is a quick update. There are a number of projects in the St. Louis region up for federal funding through East West Gateway and their competitive transportation grants program. I just dropped a link to a listing that TrailNet did where we highlight some of these projects that are a little bit more walking and biking friendly, mostly prioritizing connections to existing greenways or trail systems. So take a look there. MetroLink and I guess Bi-State overall is also requesting some funding to purchase some replacement buses. So check that out. It's not a complete listing of all the projects, but it has instructions on how you can weigh in and give public comment.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing that. I want to share just one last thing. There is a neighborhood foresters pilot happening in Benton Park. So if you live in Benton Park West, you can become trained as a forester. We know that trees are an important part of walking and keeping temperature cool, and sidewalks a nice place to be. So I wish I could do that program, so I want other people to do it. Okay, we will meet a month from today. I will send out notes in a couple of weeks. Our next agenda will feature Jen Wade from MoDOT, and we'll hear more about the unfunded needs list and the way that MoDOT is working with agencies across the region. And we'll look forward to seeing you all there. Be safe, enjoy spring,